Every day on this channel, I go through everything that Elon said on X in the last 24 hours. And here's how many times Elon posted about each subject today. What I will do is cover everything he said about each topic before moving on to the next one. And let's start with all things space, because today we got some awesome announcements. Donald Trump reporting that Sean Duffy has done an incredible job as interim administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. This evening, I am pleased to nominate Jared Isaacman, an accomplished business leader, philanthropist, pilot, and astronaut, as administrator of NASA. Jared's passion for space, astronaut experience, and dedication to pushing the boundaries of exploration, unlocking the mysteries of the universe, and advancing the new space economy make him ideally suited to lead NASA into a bold new era. Congrats to Jared, his wife Monica, and their children. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So Elon posted that with a heart, a rocket ship, and an American flag. And then Jared Isaacman said, "Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity. It would be an honor to serve my country under your leadership. I'm also very grateful to Secretary Duffy, who skillfully oversees NASA alongside his many other responsibilities." And Jared goes on to thank lots and lots of people, and then he says that NASA will never be a caretaker of history, but will forever make history. Godspeed to President Trump and Godspeed NASA, as America leads the greatest adventure in human history. And Elon reposted that. And Elon's been talking a lot lately about data centers in space. And the opportunity, he says, is even greater if they have a lunar base producing solar-powered AI satellites locally and accelerating them to escape velocity with a mass driver. So they would need a base on the moon. And so Joel quotes this and says, "Elon's new posts about things we can do in space with fully reusable super heavy vehicles are important. I have been wondering for years when he would realize that there are much more important things to do in space before building a city on Mars. There's massive AI data processing centers, space solar power satellites, massive swarms of imaging systems, and space settlements in deep space and on the moon." Elon said, "We should not take survival on Earth too much for granted. No commercial opportunity, however large, is more important than ensuring the long-term survival of consciousness, which becoming multiplanetary enables. Space habitats require mass transfer from elsewhere to grow. Planets do not. That said, a self-sustaining city on the moon, while not as resilient to calamities that affect Earth as Mars, due to its proximity to Earth, is probably nonetheless worth the doing in addition to Mars." And you can see back in January of this year, Peter Haig made this post about the long-running debate between the Mars people and the space habitat people, the Musk camp versus the Bezos camp. And Peter says, "At the time I posted this, Elon viewed the moon and its resources as a distraction from the Mars mission. But now he's talking about 100 terawatts a year solar power using lunar resources as a long-term goal. This would, going on my beer mat calculations, require about 210 million tons of silicon per year. Getting this from lunar silica, you would yield about 240 million tons of oxygen per year as a byproduct. You could vent over 99% of this into space and still have more than you could possibly use for the Mars fleet. Now, it would obviously be foolish to put this on the critical path for Mars. That will have to use Earth-launched oxygen until lunar industry ramps up and should not wait. But long-term, it would mean a starship to Mars would only require one tanker instead of 6. Moon, Mars, asteroids, etc. are complementary goals, not opposed ones. Developing one helps the others." Elon replied saying, "Scaling AI is what changes the equation." X Freeze says that every major company wants a data center in space, but there's only one who can actually make it happen. SpaceX is the go-to option for launching orbital data centers, offering unmatched launch frequency, reliability, and cost efficiency for both low Earth orbit and lunar missions. Companies book ride shares on Falcon 9 or use dedicated cargo Dragon flights to the International Space Station. Others are basically non-existent compared to SpaceX's scale and infrastructure. So SpaceX is driving the trend for orbital data centers and supporting cutting-edge space ventures, and this is all without Starship. Imagine what happens when it's fully operational. Arthur says a lot of servers can fit in this bad boy. And Elon says, bullseye. And what do you know? Google says that our TPUs are headed to space. That stands for Tensor Processing Units, and they're used to train neural networks. Google CEO Sundar says, inspired by our history of moonshots from quantum computing to autonomous driving, Project Suncatcher is exploring how we could one day build scalable machine learning compute systems in space, harnessing more of the sun's power. Like any moonshot, it's going to require us to solve a lot of complex engineering challenges. and early research shows our Trillium generation TPU survived without damage when tested in a particle accelerator to simulate low Earth orbit levels of radiation. However, significant challenges still remain, like thermal management and on-orbit system reliability. More testing and breakthroughs will be needed as we count down to launch 2 prototype satellites with Planet by early 2027, our next milestone of many. Excited for us to be a part of all the innovation happening in this space. Elon replied, saying, "Great idea, LOL." And Google also does quantum computing, which Elon said the other day is best done in the permanently shadowed craters on the moon. So Martin quoted that today, saying, "Moon craters would be worse than deep underground labs on every criterion I can come up with." Elon replied saying, "You don't get it." And Elon was also talking yesterday about large solar-powered AI satellite constellation that would be able to prevent global warming by making tiny adjustments in how much solar energy reached Earth. And then today, Robin replied saying, "Global warming is good. Heat deaths are tiny compared to cold deaths. If the climate should warm up by 1 degree Celsius, obviously this would lead to a much greater reduction in cold deaths than would increase heat deaths. That is a net benefit to humanity." Elon says if it turns out that heating is better, redirecting just a small amount of solar energy to Earth would solve that too. And over the years, Elon has evolved the concept on how to pay for Mars settlement. And I think his posts yesterday and today should be interpreted in that context. The evolution. 2016 Guadalajara, settlers will sell their homes on Earth to buy tickets to Mars. 2017 Starship will raise funds by doing point-to-point transportation on Earth. 2018 Elon stated that his personal wealth is earmarked to pay for Mars as bridge funding. 2019 revenue from Starlink is tied to paying for Mars settlement. And then a few days ago, Starlink will not just be an internet relay, but a distributed AI compute system. Yesterday and today, Elon leans further into space-based compute and lunar resources to build it. I think this formula, all of the above, will easily pay for Mars. I mean, building it won't be easy at all, but the upside of space-based AI is unbounded. So Mars funding should be covered easily by this plan. I have long believed that economics will be the hardest part of Mars settlement, not radiation or gravity or technology, and I honestly think the economics can now be seen as a solved problem. Elon replied saying, "Yes." And we saw Elon say yesterday that there are good engineers at Boeing and Lockheed, but we have to get rid of the cost-plus contracting system that incentivizes maximizing costs. Robin said that cost-plus contracting enables companies to basically scam NASA and the US taxpayer for an absurd amount. The SLS Mobile Launcher 2 contract went from $383 million to an estimated $2.5 billion, and Elon reposted this. And in response to Hurricane Melissa, the Starlink team has been working to provide vital connectivity to support relief and recovery efforts. Over 800 kits have been donated to local governments and humanitarian organizations, including over 600 in Jamaica, and free service has been enabled for customers in impacted areas. Direct-to-cell capabilities were also activated via local partners, enabling mobile connectivity through apps and messaging for over 250,000 people in impacted areas. The Starlink team will continue to support efforts on the ground and provide connectivity when it matters most, and Elon reposted that. And on Starlink, Ontario will miss its 2025 rural broadband goal, pushing it to mid-2028. This is due to Ontario Premier Doug Ford scrapping the $100 million Starlink contract back in March and paying an undisclosed break fee. Ford did this for political reasons against Trump and Elon's support for him, all at the expense of his own constituents. There are no viable alternatives, and the $4 billion program targeting 700,000 households remains active. And Elon reposted this as well. And Kaizen says every American owes it to themselves to go see a SpaceX rocket launch. They are a reminder that there's more to life than politics and problems. It would be useful to make this a field trip for public schools. There is no better demonstration of what makes America special. And Elon quoted that with a rocket ship. And moving on to Tesla, as we saw yesterday, Charles Schwab, they own a lot of Tesla shares, and they reported that they're going to vote no on Elon Musk's pay package vote. So Jason DeBolt said, "Hey, Charles Schwab, I need to speak with someone from Schwab Private Wealth Services this week. Please reach out via email. Here's why this is urgent. At least 6 of your ETF funds, 7 million Tesla shares, voted against Tesla's board. And my 240,000 plus Tesla investor followers are asking why Schwab would oppose one of the most successful corporate boards in history. Many of my followers are Schwab clients holding more shares than me. As a custodian of ETF shares, your fiduciary duty is to vote for shareholders' best interests. For a board that has delivered extraordinary returns, voting against their recommendations doesn't align with retail investors, Tesla employees, or the leadership we invested to support. If Schwab's proxy voting policies don't reflect shareholder interests, my followers and I will move our collective tens of millions in Tesla shares to a broker that does, via account transfer as soon as this week. I'm not making empty threats. I'm ready to move my shares now. The Tesla investor community is engaged and ready to act as well. And Elon reposted that. Zero Hedge said retail investors rage at Charles Schwab for refusing to back Musk's pay package. Elon replied saying they are acting contrary to the wishes of their customers. Kevin said, I'm moving my $1 million Roth account out of Charles Schwab today. And Elon reposted that as well. Sawyer Merritt said he would do the same, and all of his followers would likely do it too. He says, I can't in good conscience stay with a brokerage that votes against this performance award plan that is, in my view, clearly in shareholders' best interests. We are ready to move our shares. I hope Charles Schwab makes the right call here. Elon replied with a heart. Brent Mayo says, I'm not a large Tesla investor and I do have bias because I know how hardcore the engineering teams are across our groups that Elon personally vets. But why in the F, as a shareholder, would you not vote yes to the Tesla proposal on compensation for the CEO? Disregarding the fact that this human has put his career and livelihood on the line at every turn to ensure his companies are successful and do not die, he quite literally runs through every barrier or challenge faced and has hit every deliverable milestone set for over 30 years. Do you want a mouthpiece CEO, or do you want one that identifies, enables hardcore leaders while challenging every status quo to deliver groundbreaking technology that revolutionizes the world daily? Note, the questions are rhetorical, so don't be an idiot. Vote yes on the compensation package. It is a no-brainer, and Elon replies with a heart. And Barron Capital of Ron Barron are voting in support of the performance award. Elon said, thanks, Ron. And Joe Gebbia is on the board of Tesla, and he says, imagine the historic, life-changing value creation for Tesla shareholders if this played out. It's only a win-win. If the CEO doesn't perform, he doesn't get the full bonus. Tesla is lucky to have Elon in this role, giving his insane work ethic and tying his reward directly to reaching this truly audacious goal. Support all Tesla investors, Elon, and vote yes. Elon said thanks. And Counterpoint Global is voting for the package, noting the incredible fundamental success and bright, ambitious future under Elon's leadership, as well as the shareholder benefits that would result if our missions are achieved. And Elon reposted this. And then finally, we got breaking news that Schwab flipped. They're now voting for the pay package. Tesla Boomer Papa says, we won, and thanks to all of you. You got them. And Elon said, yay. And this was also confirmed by more official sources. Now, the new Tesla AI5 chip. It'll be in-house design. It'll be 40 times faster, 8 times the compute, 9 times the memory, 5 times the bandwidth, 10 times cheaper per inference than NVIDIA, and 3 times more efficient per watt. Built by Samsung with lithography by TSMC, all performed in Texas and Arizona. Production 2026. It is a big deal. So Elon replies to this and he says slightly different versions of the Tesla AI5 chip will be made at TSMC and Samsung simply because they translate designs to physical form differently, but the goal is that our AI software works identically. We will have samples and maybe a small number of units in 2026, but high volume production is only possible in 2027. So small number of units next year, high volume production is only possible in 2027. AI6 will use the same fabs but achieve roughly twice the performance, aiming for a fast follow to AI5, so hopefully mid-2028 for volume production of AI6. AI7 will need different fabs as it is more adventurous. And Rain says, I think there's something very subtle happening in FSD V14. According to Elon, this version allows the car to see the world with far less compression loss. In other words, it perceives everything with higher fidelity, richer detail, and more texture. This means it can now see cars through trees, notice leaves on the road, realize hand gestures from drivers inside other cars. It's like upgrading from a 480p video stream to 4K. The model is learning to see the world all over again with fresh eyes. However, this improvement is a double-edged sword that requires much greater skill in training. In the past, FSD ignored many small details. Things like debris, potholes, leaves, and hand gestures were mostly lost during compression, so they didn't influence its driving behavior. That made it easier for the model to appear smooth and confident. But now FSD has to interpret all these nuances to drive safely and naturally. To maintain smoothness, it needs a much deeper understanding of the world around it. There is another consequence as well. The new model is more sensitive to occlusion because it now depends so heavily on detailed visual information. Losing those details under poor visibility affects it more than before. When its view becomes unclear, it tends to react with extreme caution, sometimes even appearing nervous or overly defensive simply because it cannot see clearly. Think of it this way: if someone were born with limited vision, they would naturally adapt and feel calm driving within that perception. But if someone was born with superhuman sight and then suddenly lost that clarity, they would feel disoriented and anxious. FSD is going through a similar experience. It now needs to learn how to drive confidently even when it temporarily loses its supervision. I believe this stage is a necessary part of its evolution, and it must go through this phase to eventually drive like a true superhuman. And Elon said yes. And Bustin, he's an XAI employee, says newly unveiled California Cyber Bear statue at Tesla engineering headquarters in Palo Alto, and Elon reposted it. And Tesla released a new video saying that megapack grid forming inverters are key to enabling global grid stability and reliability. This technology allows megapack to resist changes on the network by creating its own voltage signal, preventing blackouts and allowing more renewables to come online. Elon said megapack will carry a lot of the world's load in energy, as it allows power plants to run continuously. And at XAI, Michael Boswell says the energy in Palo Alto is different at the offices. No one is going through the motions here. You can't. You won't survive. Elon says the intensity is excellent. And John Carmack says, I appreciate how Grok doesn't sugarcoat corrections. In all caps, it said, wrong. And Elon reposted this. And Grum said the more you cite and link to Grokopedia, the faster that you kill Wikipedia. The algorithm will start to favor it on Google search and elsewhere, even if you post and share links here. Elon said bullseye. And wow, language models can talk without words. A new framework called Cache to Cache lets multiple language models communicate directly through their key value caches instead of text, transferring deep semantics without token-by-token generation. It fuses cache representations via a neural projector and gating mechanism for efficient inter-model exchange. The payoff is up to 10% higher accuracy, 3 to 5% gains over text-based communication, and twice the fast responses. Beth Jazo says hopefully Neuralink will unlock this ability for direct, latent space communication between humans as well. Elon said it will. Words are very lossy compression. And moving on to politics, a big day today as people in New York City vote on who should be the next mayor. Seth says, my experience voting in New York City is that no ID is required. Zoran's on the ballot twice in the top row. Eric Adams, who dropped out to avoid splitting the vote, is still on the ballot. And Cuomo is in the bottom right corner, second row. Elon said, wow. Elon says the New York City ballot form is a scam. No ID is required. Other mayoral candidates appear twice. Cuomo's name is last in the bottom right. Polymarket says Zoran Mamdani listed twice on the ballot for today's mayoral election. There's a 92% chance that he wins, and there's Cuomo down here on the right. Zoran appearing twice, as well as Curtis appearing twice. Elon said, given that he's on the ballot twice, maybe he can win twice too. And Zoran said when Cuomo refuses to tax the rich, he's refusing to let workers enjoy the wealth they created. When he says low taxes foster a business-friendly environment, he means an environment where it's easy for bosses to steal from workers. Taxation isn't theft, capitalism is. And Zoran Mamdani majored in African studies. Elon says, amazing. Peter also posted the ballot, saying by sheer coincidence all 4 anomalies hurt Cuomo, and therefore help Zoran. And Elon reposted this. Readers added context to the image, saying, New York elections allow for electoral fusion where multiple parties may list the same candidate. In 2024, for example, Trump's name appeared twice as he was nominated by both the Republicans and the Conservative Party. And Adams dropped after the deadline to change the ballot. And David Marcus says the fact that some U.S. states don't require showing an ID to vote is totally insane. I can't think of any other major democracy where this is true. Rubin said it's incredible that Mexico, with far more vast poverty than USA, has all citizens with voter ID cards. It's not that complicated. Why do we not have the same? Elon said because requiring ID would stop fraud. Insurrection Barbie said if I need to show my ID to get Sudafed at Walgreens, you need to show your ID to vote. If Florida and Texas can count and report vote totals the night of, so can every single other place. And Elon reposted that. 99% of American citizens 18 and older have a valid form of government-issued ID, either a non-expired driver's license, passport, or state-issued ID card. If you are against showing ID to vote, you are cheating. Simple. Elon reposted that as well. And these posts no longer exist, but back in 2020, Zoran said each according to their need, each according to their ability. So today Zuby said, good luck, New York City, and Elon reposted that. He then said, indeed. Mike Solana says, remarkable that people are somehow just discovering that Zoran quoted Karl Marx happily in public just a few years ago. What did you guys think we'd been discussing all this time? And Elon reposted that. And here's Nick Shirley asking Zoran Mamdani voters their favorite socialist country.
Who are you voting for mayor?
I like Cuomo, but I think Mamdani might be pulling the lead a little bit with me.
What's your favorite example of socialism that's worked?
I don't have a big example of it, of socialism.
Like between Venezuela, Cuba, Soviet Union, what's your favorite one?
Man, you put me on the spot. I'm gonna have to go Cuba. Man. I'm gonna have to go Cuba. Yeah. Let's go there. It's just so complicated for me. I got so much information in my head, but I'm gonna go with that.
Do you think Mamdani's the future of the Democratic Party?
I mean, I hope so.
Elon quoted that saying, And Elon posted the other day to vote Cuomo, and Trump Tracker responded saying, this is the third sexual assaulter you have endorsed. Which is not a lot, but weird it has happened 3 times. Elon replied saying, do you have a better suggestion? And Data Republican says that I just came across this in an Open Society Foundation's document about how to fix public mistrust of liberal democracy. And I honestly feel sick reading it. I've read many alarming quotes, but few are so mask off like this. I believe the time has come for a responsible, courageous elite. Those who care far more about addressing the genuine social problems than about election results. Only a political elite with vision, prudence, and a focus on the general good to whom the electorate can cede part of their sovereignty in the elections will be able to justify public trust and spearhead our struggle to survive. Read that again. The proposed solution to the public's distrust in democracy is less democracy, an unelected elite to whom the public should cede sovereignty. Abolish democracy to save democracy. This kind of thinking is what we're up against. Elon said demented. And in a suspicious development, it's been exposed that a whopping 41,000 Wisconsin voters' registration files do not match the driver and ID database. That's nearly double from 2020. Crooked. Investigate the voter rolls. And Elon reposted that. And California's Medi-Cal budget crisis would end overnight if the state stopped funding free healthcare for illegal immigrants. Instead, leftists in the state have proposed a wealth tax that would essentially abolish the concept of private property. And Elon reposted that. And Billie Eilish said, if you are a billionaire, why are you a billionaire? Beth Bezos said the budget for the US government is $7 trillion. Each member of the House of Representatives or Senate are effectively deca-billionaires in terms of their capital allocation power per year. It's a total projection deflection to blame the leaders of big tech for society's problems. And Elon reposted that. And yesterday we saw Elon say that it's very important to appreciate that the debate is not about whether illegals will sway future US elections due to census apportionment, but just by how much. And Declaration of Memes says the left controls the country because they control the education. Public schools are leftist indoctrination centers. Elon said true. And let's hear from Tommy Robinson in the UK.
Just before, as I'm walking out of court, Elon Musk, I'm forever grateful. If you didn't step in and fund my legal fight for this, then I'd probably be in jail. So today, free speech won. In our fight back, the judge gave a damning verdict against them and against their unlawful and their targeted harassment. So thank you, Elon, from me, personally, thank you.
Elon said, thank you for raising the flag of England while so many cowards cowered. And then Tommy said, let me remind you all that I have another trial in October 2026 that is even more insane than this case. I face 10 years in prison for the next offense. It's all lawfare. It's targeted harassment. Even if you win, then the process is the punishment. We fight on. Elon said, wow. And Matt Goodwin says, what our leaders will never talk about. In the last week alone in the UK, in just 1 week, and viewer discretion is advised, we've gone from reading about the 27-year-old mother Rhiannon White, stabbed in the head 20 times by an illegal migrant from Sudan, to Wayne Broadhurst, stabbed to death by an illegal from Afghanistan while walking his dog, to a small boat illegal migrant stabbing a stranger to death in a bank in Derby, to a migrant from Afghanistan strangling a railway worker over a minor ticket dispute, to a Syrian illegal migrant sexually assaulting a student in Cardiff, to illegal migrants chasing migrant hotel workers with knives because they didn't like the food, to 10 people suffering a mass stabbing on a train at the hands of 2 black British men for no apparent reason. Why is this happening? Because our so-called leaders have been importing millions of people from highly violent, conflict-ridden, and yes, inferior honor cultures from the third world where settling grievances through violence is standard. As the academic Garrett Jones points out in his book, when a nation imports people, it imports the average cultural traits of those people. Mass, uncontrolled immigration is not just the importing of people, it's the importing of cultures. And the cultures we are importing are not just radically different and incompatible to our own, but visibly inferior, primitive, stuck in cultural codes and practices we moved on from hundreds of years ago. It is, to quote Gadsod, suicidal empathy. Our leaders think they are helping these people when in fact they are killing their own society, country, and people from within. None of this can be said in Westminster, where universal liberalism, all cultures are equal, reigns supreme. This is what you saw in Question Time this week, when I was widely attacked by a liberal ruling class that cares more about helping people from backward cultures than defending its own people. But its effects can clearly be seen in the extent to which first and second generation migrants here in the UK, who we are told are British, nice boys from Cardiff, turn out to be highly violent criminals, continuing the cultural traits from their origin countries. Again, nobody in Westminster wants to think about this point about culture. But look, 2025 Manchester synagogue terrorist, Syrian parents. 2024 Southport terrorist, Rwandan parents. 2021 Liverpool terrorists, both in Iraq. 2021 Sir David Ames terrorist, parents from Somalia. 2021 Reading terrorist, born in Libya. And the list goes on. No other society in the world would tolerate this, would do to its own people what our leaders are doing to us. Could you imagine, say, the United Arab Emirates, Japan, China doing this? Of course not, because they are not idiots. They do not tolerate suicidal empathy. Through mass immigration, porous borders, and a total failure to integrate newcomers, our leaders have made us much less safe and put our own people at risk. These migrants do not instantly adopt the host country's British culture and identity the moment they sign a few papers. Far from it. They retain central aspects of their origin countries, including religion, belief, attitude towards violence, hatred of non-believers, and so on. This is what the rape gang scandal was about. We imported clan-based networks from rural Pakistan that think non-believers are fair game and distrust authority. The vast majority of radical Islamists in Britain were either born abroad or traced their roots back on these islands only one generation, while living in closed social networks filled with other people from their origin countries, which reinforce these different cultures. This is then further enabled by an idiotic ruling class and woke left that pursues virtue and social status for itself by proclaiming platitudes like diversity is a success, while also having to use speech codes, far right, racist, and so on, to shut down any dissent. Then it uses multiculturalism to encourage minorities to remain distinctive and separate from the majority, even prioritizing them over the majority. It is all completely insane. This is what the UK has now been doing for 30 years, and today this is being compounded by importing 180,000 unvetted illegal migrants into the country in just 7 years, with another 180,000 forecast to arrive by the next general election if the average trend continues. Just think about that. By the next election, we will be talking about 400,000 unvetted illegal migrants roaming around the country, many from the same highly violent, conflict-prone societies as the ones that have given us all the chaos above. And so in the years ahead, this chaos will only increase. It will only get worse because our leaders refuse to see this reality and make changes. In short, every terrorist attack, every stabbing, every rape, every sexual assault, every rape gangs is a reminder of the fact our leaders, who are supposed to defend us, are importing people who hate who we are and cling to totally different cultures, identities, and outlooks, all of which is making our own culture, identity, and social cohesion harder to maintain. We can either keep ignoring the critical importance of culture or we can do something about it. And what would doing something about it look like? Radically reshaping our country and its future around people who have deep roots and ties to this country. Rewarding those who genuinely integrate, removing those who do not. Ending the extreme policy of mass uncontrolled immigration, and doing whatever is necessary to fix our borders, end soft on crime policies, and launch an all-out assault on radical, violent Islamism. We have a choice. We can do these things, or we can keep killing ourselves from within. And Elon reposted that. And The Princess Bride never ages. It's witty, romantic, and endlessly quotable. Carrie and Mandy performed their entire sword duel themselves after months of training, turning it into one of the most memorable fights in cinema history. Elon said such a great scene. And I regret saving this for last because a lot of our brains are probably mush by now. Anastasia says gamma rays are the shortest wavelength of light, on the order of 10 to 12 meters. Planck length, the allegedly smallest unit of the universe, is 10 to 35 meters. How come we don't see light down to Planck wavelengths? Is it a detector problem or a limit of the universe? Martin says because of the Big Bang. For photons with extremely large energy, the universe is opaque. They would annihilate with cosmic microwave background photons and produce a shower of less energetic particles before they could travel anywhere. So Elon had Grok analyze Martin's post. And Grok says that Martin's post from a particle physics expert at Durham University clarifies that ultra-high energy gamma rays cannot propagate freely due to pair production with cosmic microwave background photons, rendering the post-Big Bang universe opaque and converting them into particle showers. So, that is everything that Elon said today. Trump nominated Jarek Eisenman to be the administrator of NASA, which Elon and many other people in the community have been vouching for. Some people were upset today with how the voter ballot in New York City looked. Charles Schwab flipped and are now voting for Elon's pay package. And with all this talk about data centers in space, Google came out and said they're sending their TPUs to space in the future, so Elon said LOL. And we learned that Tesla's AI5 chip will go into high production in 2027 with a little bit of production in 2026. And if you guys want early access to these daily videos, you can gain access by joining the channel as a member, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.